Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, it is episode 92, where we are finally talking about Bugonia, the newest Yorgos Lanthimos film. I saw this in a very fun Thursday night theater. I was originally going to see it last Sunday, and then it was too late, and then I was going to see it Monday, then it was too late, then Tuesday, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, I finally saw it in a cool sort of older style theater on Thursday night, and it was a lot of fun. I'm very excited to talk about this movie today. But first of all, I hope you're all doing well. A couple things to plug before we get into the meat of the episode. First up, I have a new YouTube video that dropped this week, all about The Batman Part 2, what we know so far, my theories, and doing some fan casting. A lot of fun to make. Go check it out on the YouTube channel. Also, timestamps below for this episode. This is a very fun movie that has tons of turns and twists. Like, the last 30 minutes is absolutely insane. So the less you know, the better. I would stick to the non-spoilers if you want to see this movie. So timestamps are below. You can enjoy the news section, the non-spoilers, then go right into what else I watched. It's going to be a very fun episode, but what do you say? Should we hop into the news of the week? We shall. Let's talk the news. Alrighty, our first piece of news this week comes in sort of a response to Kevin O'Leary's comments about the background actors on Marty Supreme, who he assured we could save millions of dollars by cutting all of the background actors and using AI replacements. Well, Simu Liu has sort of shot back at that, saying, replacing background actors with AI deprives people of the ability to pick up skills to become an actor. Quote, I think if I was able to learn from that experience as a background actor, then how many other people are doing the same? In depriving the world of background actors, you're also depriving people the opportunity to kind of pick up these skills. Film is such an artist's medium. Of all the uses of AI that have come forth, replacing art is just, I feel like, the last thing that anybody wants to do with AI. I feel like art is art because it's human. It comes down to even the way the extras move. It all plays into the frame and it's all meaningful to the story. And this is not only speaking to a huge problem in the industry of people wanting to, of course, cut corners and replace people to save money and time or whatever, because it doesn't have to look good. At least we save some money, right? But I think Simu Liu is also talking to something that's happening in a larger way in the world where, you know, this year, like, I lost my job and I was looking for a job for a couple of months, and a lot of jobs were just training an AI thing and eventually, you know, training it to replace you. Or on the other hand, there weren't any entry-level positions out there because now all of the entry-level tasks and jobs are just going to AI because companies want to save money. So instead of hiring someone who can learn and grow and move into a business or move into an entire industry, those tasks are just being given to AI because it's way cheaper and way easier for a company. So I think it's really well put by Simu Liu that he learned so much as a background actor, and, you know, that's how you learned how to act on set, not just like how to genuinely be an actor and act on screen, but how to conduct yourself while on set. What do you do between takes? How do you communicate to different people on set? And all of those little things that you learn only by being on a set is so important. So I'm really happy that Simu Liu took the time to even talk about that. And I know he has lots of public comments and puts his nose into every debate or every opinion, but this is a very rare time where I was like, wow, Simu Liu sort of popping off and really just making some great points. And I hope that, you know, others will speak up and do the same, that we can't have AI replacing the simple jobs that we need done, and really the learning grounds or the educational foundational positions for people to get better in these industries. And speaking of AI, this will not be an AI heavy episode, I promise, don't worry. A judge has ruled that George R.R. Martin and other authors can sue OpenAI for copyright infringement. Said ChatGPT generated Game of Thrones content similar enough to infringe copyright. OpenAI's motion to dismiss was denied. Now, yes, there's this huge sort of, I don't know, AI bubble going on right now where everyone's like, oh, look, I remade Lord of the Rings, or I remade a whatever it is, but in AI and to be in this style, and it all looks like shit. You can't convince me otherwise. It looks terrible. But I think eventually all of these companies are going to have to step up, and either they are going to monetize it and get all of the profits of, I don't know, whatever money is being made off of AI. I don't see how any of these companies are like profitable just making AI slop, or if they're not, you know, wanting to basically monetize it, they're going to say that generative AI cannot pull from previously made content or ideas or IP or whatever it may be. And I hope that's the direction we go, because then people are just going to get bored of like, oh, I made this video of an ape doing what, and it's just boring as shit. You know, it's like NFTs. Like NFTs died out so quickly because people were like, oh, look at my ape, it's blah blah blah, and it's this new thing. Well, AI, I think, is just going to take on a whole other political meaning, like whatever it might be. People are just going to be doing deep fakes over and over, and I think it's going to slowly turn people away from the internet. I've already sort of stopped trusting a lot of videos right away. Like just this morning, a friend sent me a video of Dakota Johnson saying, hi, I'm Dakota Johnson, and I think Dakota Johnson's going to be the most drunk at this Halloween party, because she had seen this other video and it was a meme, and they put in the caption, this is not AI, and I honestly didn't believe it, because her teeth, something like when she was speaking, her teeth sort of made a weird glitch, and I was like, oh, this like has to be AI or something like that. So I don't know, I'm just starting to have a lot of trust issues on the internet, and it almost feels like I'm becoming more of a caveman and being like, no, I only trust, pure sources of DVDs and newspaper, or I don't even know how to explain it. I'm just becoming more and more cynical about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, everything, because I'm like, oh, I wonder how they're cutting corners to save money in this. But anyways, okay, I'm going to move off of the AI topic now, because I could genuinely ramble for the entire episode. Let's move on to some DC Studios news, because we finally have some updates about Green Lantern, or Lanterns to be exact, about the show, as well as Sergeant Rock, and then some release date updates. So first of all, Chris Mundy, who is the Lanterns showrunner, was talking about Aaron Pierre playing Jon Stewart. Now, he said, our show is in a lot of ways about replacement. When should someone step aside, and when is it time for the next person to take the reins? That push and pull between these two characters is really important. So much of the power that Jon has is by not taking the bait, understanding that you lose your power if you're yelling and screaming. That's what we're trying to convey. He knows he belongs, so he doesn't have to overcompensate. There's a real balance there that's just innately inside of Aaron. He's big, he's an intimidating presence just physically, but there's a softness to him. There's a thoughtfulness. You can't teach that. This comment perfectly encapsulates what I've seen from Aaron Pierre as an actor, but also Jon Stewart, who I really know from, Justice League Animated and Justice League Unlimited, that he is this former architect, cool guy that turned into a Green Lantern because the ring chose him, but he's not a angry, loud, vengeful guy. He's very reserved. He keeps to himself, and he only raises his voice when necessary. Last year, we talked about Rebel Ridge on the podcast, and I said Aaron Pierre, his character is this guy that doesn't lose his temper, is very slow, very calculated, really does measure out every move he's taking. And Chris Mundy just perfectly made that bridge, or that connection, of why he was cast as Green Lantern, specifically Jon Stewart, because he could do that so well, and I'm so excited to see him in this role. I think he's going to absolutely crush it. I can't wait for him to be the full-on Green Lantern of the DCU and see him in all of these movies that he's going to show up in, all these TV shows. I mean, Lanterns is allegedly going to release like next September or next August, so after Supergirl, which comes in July or June. And now this week people are saying that Lanterns is coming after Supergirl, which I'm very surprised. I thought they would have had like February, March TV release date, but we're about to have a huge gap without anything from the DCU, which I find really surprising, because you thought after Peacemaker they probably would have wanted to keep the momentum going a little bit, but it does seem like they are happy to take a little bit of a break after a few back-to-back projects, really, with like Creature Commandos. Then it was a few months until Superman, and then Superman right after it went into Peacemaker season 2. And I think, not in a rude way, but we've had 3 James Gunn projects back to back to back. Like Creature Commandos, he didn't fully do by himself. He had his creative partner on that, but Superman and then Peacemaker, I think it's going to be really good for DC audiences to get Supergirl, then Lanterns, then Clayface, which is 3 DC projects that are from other people. Even if, James Gunn and Peter Safran are still producing them, I think it's a really good move, and people are excited for what else is out there, including myself. I'm very excited to see other voices within the DCU connecting this shared universe. As much as I love James Gunn's writing and directing, I just watched another James Gunn written script last night that I'll talk about, and what else I watched today that is not from the DCU, although in some ways, these characters are connected to the DCU or DC in general, and they have been many times. But this has me very excited what Chris Mundy has just said about Aaron Pierre as Jon Stewart, because that is exactly who the character should be. He is this quiet, reserved, powerful, really, really intelligent and measured guy, and Aaron Pierre is a freaking beast. Oh my god, dude. He posted this workout video on his Instagram or whatever a few weeks ago, and it was just like, Jesus Christ, this guy could crush a house between his thighs. So I'm pumped for him to do the physicality of Jon Stewart, but I'm really excited for him to embody that personality and that character. And another bit of Sergeant Rock DCU news, Colin Farrell this week was actually talking about the film because he was cast as Sergeant Rock, and he said the script was fantastic, but he's unsure of its status and only that it should be made. Quote, I was going to do it with Luca. We had some really nice chats. I have no idea where it is now, but it should be made. It's really, really good. I wouldn't be surprised if Luca maybe did come back to Sergeant Rock because it was his team really that put it together. I don't think it's a very pressing project that it's like, oh, we need this right now to set up the DCU. So if they want to, kick it down the line a year or two, let's focus on some other stuff. Maybe we do, we do the Brave and the Bold, we get that rolling, and then we get the Batman Part 2 out for the Elseworld stuff, and then we can address Sergeant Rock and do a fun GI robot in live action along with Sergeant Rock. And it's not really high priority compared to, Man of Tomorrow, Lanterns, Batman movies, or Wonder Woman, or The Flash or Aquaman, all those characters, But the fact that it is being spoken about a little more openly, I think James Gunn even commented on it a little while back and said, Sergeant Rock is not completely dead, but it has been sort of put on pause. Or he did at one point. I know he has openly talked about it, but it's nice that Colin Farrell has talked about it just straight up. He was also talking about the Batman Part 2 this week, saying, oh, it takes place a few weeks after the Penguin, and it's really great. Like, it's a masterpiece, and just getting me all excited. So, it was a good week to release my video because I was excited about that. And there's tons of news coming out, like the Andor production designer, Luke Hendricks, Luke something. He's actually doing the production design on the Batman Part 2 because they're changing the production designer from the first film because he's not available. So an Andor Chernobyl production designer is a great choice. Oh my God. The Andor sets, like all the Andor sets and the gadgets and the little gizmos, all the design of everything is just fantastic. I'm so excited to see like a Wayne Industries building or possibly a Court of Owls hideout, all that stuff from the Chernobyl Andor dude sounds amazing to me. But as for Sergeant Rock, I'm happy it's not completely dead, supposedly. Like, it really should be made because it sounds like a very fun project. But as for a movie that is being made, Doug Liman, who directed the first Roadhouse sequel, or whatever you want to call it, the reboot legacy sequel, the one with Jake Gyllenhaal, that's a reboot, right? Well, he did not return for the sequel. And Deadline this week said, looks like there might be a round 2 in the bitter bar fight between Amazon MGM and Doug Liman over Roadhouse. Liman, who revived the franchise with a streamer hit remake that starred Jake Gyllenhaal, has quietly acquired the sequel rights to Roadhouse, scripted by original writer R. Lance Hill. The filmmaker plans to make Roadhouse Dylan, the scribe sequel to the iconic 1989 film that starred the late Patrick Swayze as the Zen tough guy who comes to a crooked town and cleans it up one bar brawl at a time. Amazon MGM has begun production on Roadhouse 2, with Elia Nashler taking over in the director's chair after Lyman. Gyllenhaal reprises as cage fighter turned bar fighter alongside Dave Bautista, Aldous Hodge, and Leela George. So Doug Liman is trying to make a sequel to the original Roadhouse, while Amazon is already making a sequel to his Roadhouse, which is really funny that we might have two Roadhouse movies going off at the same time. Like, what a weird Hollywood incident. It's like, it really did remind me of when, what was the company? Was it Ion Productions? They owed Sean Connery one more Bond film, but by that time, I think George Lazenby had taken over, or Roger Moore, but I believe it was George Lazenby had taken over. So there was two Bond films at the same time coming out because they were able to produce their own Bond film under a separate banner, which is just hilarious because you had Sean Connery coming back as an old man. Meanwhile, there's a new Bond coming out, and this is exactly what's happening with the Roadhouse sequel, is that he's going to ignore his own first film and do a legacy sequel to the original film, while Amazon is doing a sequel to his film, which is actually the third Roadhouse film in a Roadhouse trilogy. It's sort of like, I guess, the Halloween films. Like, didn't John Carpenter make a new version, or no, someone else made a new version, and there's like the different sort of canons that you can choose to watch. I don't know. It's a classic sort of sequel battle type thing that is going down, and I'm very excited to see how it shakes out, whether Amazon is actually going to go through with theirs or if they're going to can it, but I feel like they're already filming, and I hope Doug Liman sort of gets to make his, because he got a little bit trashed on his version that they didn't put it in theaters, and he just refused to promote it because I think he was promised a theatrical run, but that really sucks. And I think that's where I'm going to wrap wrap up the news for today. Once again, timestamps below. If you don't want to know anything about Bugonia, you can go straight to what else I watched, where there's lots of fun stuff, or you can just listen to the non-spoiler section where I will keep it very thematic, my overall thoughts. It'll be a lot of fun, but let's do it. Let's talk about Bugonia. Bugonia is a 2025 comedy sci-fi coming in at exactly 2 hours. It is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. It is written by Will Tracy with a budget of $45 to $55 million. Reviews are currently pretty positive, 7.7 on IMDb, 87% on Rotten Tomatoes with an 86% audience score, 4.0 average on Letterboxd with a 4-star mode. The synopsis for Bugonia: two conspiracy-obsessed men kidnap the CEO of a major company when they become convinced that she's an alien who wants to destroy Earth. The film stars Emma Stone as Michelle Fuller, Jesse Plemons as Teddy, Aidan Delbus as Dawn, Stavros Halkias as Casey, Alicia Silverstone as Sandy, and that's really it. It's a pretty small cast, but a small and fantastic cast. Let's talk Bugonia. Here are my initial thoughts. This was a mindfuck, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I actually had so much fun in this movie. It took a little bit to get going, but honestly, once we got going, it did not stop until the very end, and I saw it in a very full theater, in an older style theater, where actually it's the one I saw Twisters in last year. It's sort of like one of the old sloped, everybody looking up at a screen theater. It was a lot of fun, but let's talk about the performances in Bugonia. Jesse Plemons as Teddy is where I want to start. I think Jesse Plemons has really just built such a fantastic career. I mean, he looks so much younger in this film because I guess he lost a bunch of weight, whether Ozempic, I don't care. I'm not going to comment on how he lost weight, but he has lost weight. He grew out his hair and he grew a really patchy beard in this film. He probably looks 10 years younger, but he still looks too old to be the age of this character, Teddy, because there's a certain context that he's living in within the film. But look, maybe he's too old for the role, but he is absolutely sensational. There is one part where he's like crying out in anger at Emma Stone's character Michelle, and I genuinely couldn't believe like the power of the scene, but also when he's doing these monologues trying to investigate, this quote unquote alien. It is just it's amazing. It is amazing. I've already seen some predictions that he's going to get an Oscar nomination for this. Maybe we'll talk later about that a little bit more and this film as a whole, but Jesse Plemons is genuinely mind-blowing in this movie. I was just so damn impressed. He's such a solid actor and he's been in so much good stuff. But let's talk about Aidan Delbus, who I don't know where they found him. He is playing Donnie, who is the cousin of Teddy, and they're the two men that kidnap Emma Stone in this film. And now Aidan Delbus is neurodivergent in real life. He is on the spectrum, I believe, and he is fantastic in this movie. Some of his scenes are so heartbreaking. One of his scenes had my theater give one of the biggest reactions I've had in a movie theater this year. I honestly couldn't believe it. I don't know where Yorgos Lanthimos found him, but he is a star. He was amazing. He has some great physical, emotional acting in this film. Some of his line deliveries are genius, but he is absolutely hilarious at the same time, and he carries so much of the heart of this film, really. And same with Emma Stone. I mean, she is a seasoned veteran at this point. This is her fourth Yorgos Lanthimos film since The Favorite was her first one in 2018, 2017, something like that. That was a while ago, but she's done that. She's done Poor Things. She's done Kinds of Kindness, and now this. And I'm really enjoying this era that she is in with Yorgos Lanthimos, where she's kind of playing these whack jobs, these insane people who are just so over the top but so much fun. And I feel like I'm one of the only people that liked Kinds of Kindness last year. I thought it was so much fun. It was 3 little cool vignettes, and I loved Emma Stone in that film. Well, she's doing a lot of the same stuff here, but in a way more rounded out way, where she's very monotone. She's very sort of trying to be level with people and be measured as the CEO, but those tricks don't really work here with these two guys, and it's fun to see her be a character that's trying to act her way out of it. Now, Stavros, who many people know from the internet, he plays Officer Casey. I think he's really good in this. I was actually very surprised how good of a performance he gives. He has a very fun scene with Jesse Plemons, actually 2 very fun scenes with Jesse Plemons, and my theater was in stitches, but they could not believe what he gets to do in this film. I was pleasantly surprised, and I think this cast is just really awesome. I mean, look, I liked Poor Things a lot, actually. I loved Poor Things. I liked Kinds of Kindness kindness, but this sort of small, more intimate cast is really interesting. How limited we are in this space with the abduction, and like you get to know maybe Teddy's mom a little bit more, slash a lot of the office people briefly in the background, but it's a very focused cast, which I like a lot. Now, this is not an original project. This was an adaptation. So it's an English language remake of the 2003 South Korean film Save the Green Planet by Jang Joon-hwan. And the basic story of that one, according to Wikipedia, begins when the main character, Lee, kidnaps another man, convinced that the latter is an alien. I don't know if it's the same sort of plot where it's like sort of their boss or a CEO slash owner of a company, but it's very interesting how this is a remake from Yorgos, and many of the reviews I've seen are people actually enjoying this version more, maybe because there's small little improvements. And Yorgos Lanthimos actually did not write this film. I believe he wrote The Favorite, Kinds of Kindness, and Poor Things. I might be wrong about that, but a lot of people were pointing out that he did not write this film, and you can sort of feel that. There's a little bit of a different dialogue or energy in this film, and people are a lot less weird. Like, people are strange in this film and have very extreme beliefs, but the dialogue feels a lot more human in this film, and I like Yorgos as a writer. I'll say that. I loved Poor Things. I thought it was such a fun movie and just like really does some crazy stuff. But at the same time, I think this movie with his writing could have gone down a very different avenue and been maybe a lot more subdued and feel less human and very, very much less relatable, I would say, because there was a lot of this movie, as much as I don't really recognize these people and I don't know these people, you know, as my friends. I'm not like, oh, that's just like my CEO friend, or oh, that's just like my conspiracy theory friend. But I felt like I knew these characters and I know these conversations that are happening. This movie is very much what you would see in a Reddit comment thread or a TikTok comment thread, or most of all Facebook. This is very much the lived in world that we are going through with CEOs who are these people sort of leeching off of society and not doing their fair share, and we're all, you know, sort of concerned or not concerned, but we're all suspicious and paranoid, and we all see them as basically aliens because, like, should billionaires exist? Absolutely not. And we're all suspicious of them and how they're sort of driving our world into the ground. But at the same time, we are all sort of acting like sheeps towards the slaughter, whether it's giving in with big tech or all of these things. We're sort of just letting them take control of us in many ways, and we're giving into these gimmicks that they introduce us to make us stupider. And it's interesting that we spoke about all the AI stuff within the news section today, because AI is a huge way that billionaires and governments are literally dumbing us down. And I know you're listening to this thinking, who's the conspiracy theorist now? But like, it's true. I mean, the amount of people that think like, oh, writing a 5-paragraph essay is hard in one class, whether I see that in TikToks from students or people who use ChatGPT to make their grocery list, make their dinner plans, or anything like that, or just how to respond to texts and stuff like that. People aren't thinking for themselves anymore, and they don't want people to think for themselves. But okay, I will move on from that and I will get back to the movie. But it's a very real conversation that this film is having about how we are sort of involved in our own slaughter. Back to Yorgos Lanthimos for a moment, because I just want to sort of step back and think about his legacy as a filmmaker. Now, he's a very, very, very interesting filmmaker. He has sort of made a name for himself in the last 6 years, I would say, as one of the big directors who is constantly in award shows and stuff like that. He made Dogtooth back at like 2009, and that's a big, big film. But where he came sort of to the public knowledge for me was The Lobster, I believe, with like Colin Farrell, Rachel Weisz. Was Barry Keoghan in that one, or was that like a deer, Killing of a Sacred Deer? That's the other one. Sorry, that's the one with Barry Keoghan. Those are two films that people constantly reference, and that's where I feel like Yorgos Lanthimos really made a name for himself, as much as there are, of course, Dogtooth fans. But for me, Poor Things was where I really discovered him, and I was a huge fan of that movie, as I said. And then Kinds of Kindness, I feel like, again, I'm one of the only fans of him, but at the same time, people are very excited whenever he has a new project on the go, and he has been working back to back to back projects. Like, he has done 3 films in 3 years with Emma Stone that have been very intense films, and he's now announced that he's going to take a break. Like, he might take a couple years off and then come back to something fresh. So it's really remarkable how a little bit of like consistency and maybe making a film every year so you're constantly in the conversation, even if they weren't all complete successes, they are still sort of acclaimed and people people talk about them and how that legacy can start to shape. It really interests me. And Yorgos Lanthimos is one of the directors now that lots of people bring up, and who are the sort of popular directors of today, or even who are the more like off-color directors of today making weird stuff. I would put Yorgos Lanthimos there. Of course, he's making very strange things, and I think he has such a fascinating sort of position in how Hollywood is talking about the downfall of our society, or talks about the themes of today. And a lot of people do not like him. A lot of people think his films are violent against women. They are like fake feminism or fake activism in some way. And I can completely see those arguments and where you might get them from. But I think he's doing a lot of honest conversations where he's sort of ripping off the Band-Aid. But at the end of the day, who am I to really argue with those things? If you're a woman watching these films and you feel like, yeah, they are very, uncomfortable for women to watch, I can't really comment on that, of course. But it is very interesting, his position within the current political discourse of film and how we are using the medium to talk about current things that are happening to us. And this film specifically, like within 2025, it's very, very poignant. As I was saying, there is a very real CEO class, struggle happening in this film, where it is a CEO versus two people who have been struggling and have lost and have been victims at the hands of these big corporations. And that is the dialogue happening in this film. And if you've seen the movie, just using the word dialogue is really funny, because can we start a dialogue? It's very CEO HR speak, but it's quite fascinating to me how he is, like a lot of other films, talking about conspiracy and paranoia as tools to push trauma away and as a way to distract yourself by getting lost in rabbit holes. And a big message of this film, by I'm not spoiling anything, it's sort of what the foundation is at the start of the movie, is politics and conspiracy and exploring these insane ideas will not heal your trauma. They might lead to different truths or different conversations, but they're not going to either bring people back, they're not going to help people, they're not going to heal people. And in some ways, they can sort of tear us apart and be the downfall of us all. And it's just a really interesting conversation that's going on here about, the extremes of each class, that you have those CEOs who are extremely deliverable driven and they only care about results, and they don't want to be ethical CEOs who are actually helping their workers. Like a big joke in the trailer that they highlight is, tell people they can go home at 5:30 unless they have work to do and unless they feel obliged to stay. Like it's sort of, they don't really have a choice to go home when their contracts say or when their schedule is supposed to be, and it's really interesting how there's the extremes of the CEOs who are mega wealthy, mega extreme, and then you have the next class underneath, this working class that's the underbelly trying to push up against those CEOs. But you can get the extreme of that class with conspiracy theorists, and how this movie is really sympathetic to conspiracy theorists. It's one thing I've seen a lot of people talking about, and it's one thing I really liked about One Battle After Another. One thing I didn't like about Eddington, I thought it was extremely cynical and like, yes, it's so funny to laugh about 2020 or whatever, but one thing I didn't like about Eddington is that it doesn't take the politics of the moment seriously, that it is making fun of us all. And as fun as that is, and at least One Battle After Another is making fun of everyone, but it's saying that it's still worth fighting for and it's still worth all of this cost. And I think Eddington is saying it in a lot less of a clean way. And this film is sort of moving in that same zone as One Battle After Another, that like, yes, we can all seem crazy, and yes, it can seem like the fight and the struggle is a little bit ridiculous and can be, you can become cynical, actually, I think is what this film is trying to say. But at the same time, these are very valid feelings you're having, and we can understand how people end up this way. Like, why do people turn to conspiracy theories? Because they lose hope in their life and they're trying to find meaning, and they are literally grasping at straws because they feel so beaten down. They feel like there's no real humane way to get back at their regular life or find success. So they turn to these avenues and they cut off to their own echo chambers. And I feel like not just conspiracy theorists, but this movie is making a really interesting point about echo chambers in general. And I've been guilty in the past of being in a little bit of an echo chamber, and I feel like we're all really in an echo chamber. Social media puts us in an echo chamber, and that's what the algorithms do by, liking a video about this one thing. The algorithm is going to show you more videos of that thing, so eventually your whole feed is just that one thing. And that is how the echo chambers sort of develop for us all. And whatever that one thing is, whether it's right-wing media, whether it's left-wing media, whether it's conspiracy theories, whether it's, videos of dogs, videos of cats, all of that stuff, your life becomes an echo chamber. And that's really what this film is trying to highlight in some way. It's trying to say that life is an echo chamber, and specifically Emma Stone's character Michelle highlights the echo chamber in a really, really brilliant way. But there's lots of sort of broad applications for this movie's analogies of CEOs and generals, or chemical treatments or medical treatments in the United States, and addiction, medical experimentation, conspiracy, taking advantage of those who may be impressionable. It's a difficult conversation to have, but the relationship between Teddy and Donnie, who are cousins, but Donnie is on the spectrum and he is neurodivergent. Maybe he can't pick up certain social cues, or he struggles to recognize certain patterns, whether it's lying or whatever it might be. And a lot of people online have highlighted this as a little bit of a modern George and Lenny from Of Mice and Men. Lenny is a neurodivergent character who is maybe being taken advantage of a little bit by George, and Lenny can see things are right, things are wrong. And there's elements of that within this film as well, that perhaps Donnie can see the truth, and often Donnie is really the moral compass of this film, that you can see what they are doing is not right. In fact, Michelle even tries to not prey on Donnie, but sort of plead to Donnie that you can see this is wrong, you can see how messed up this is, and I can help you. And there is a lot of that dynamic being played out here, and I don't want to go any further than that because it's really brilliant the way Yorgos Lanthimos uses that. And it is a very difficult conversation to have of, does Ted truly love Donnie? I think he does, but is he taking advantage of him? Maybe he is, or maybe Donnie, he is an independent thinker, he might be impressionable, but at the same time, he is still a lot more moral than Teddy, or he has his reasonable doubts. And as much as I've talked about the themes so far, I do want to just say tonally, this movie really works. I think Yorgos balances the comedy and the strange and the drama versus the thriller elements really well. This was such a tonally well put together film. It does comedy just at the right moments, and this movie is really, really funny. My theater was dying of laughter in many moments. There are many burst out loud scenes in this film that are truly, truly ridiculous in the classic Yorgos fashion. Like, he is just a crazy director, and the writing is really good as well. I know he didn't write it, it was Will Tracy, but Will Tracy's script is really good. I don't know how many things they are taking from the original Save the Green Planet film, but this film is really well put together from a tonal balance perspective. Like, it's been a good year for movies that are trying to do comedy and something crazy, whether it's Key 17, If I Had Legs I'd Kick You, or Sinners. I mean, Sinners has a lot of funny moments in it, or even, Sorry Baby and Friendship are both hilarious films that have very deeply disturbing things or very sad dramatic things, and they're very different films. Of course, I'm not saying Sorry Baby and Friendship should be in the same bracket because they're very different, but it's been a very interesting year tonally in how people are seeing the humor in our very fucked up time, but at the same time taking things extremely seriously, which I appreciate. And Yorgos does a very good job here. And on a technicality standpoint, I do want to say this film, of course, is very well directed, but the cinematography from Robbie Ryan, who has worked with Yorgos on a few things, it adds such a layer of beauty to this story that is just a really ugly and sad world, but there's such a beauty to the nature in it and the house where they live. It's shot on 35mm VistaVision, and it's absolutely gorgeous in that 4:3 aspect ratio. I love it. Tones and the colors that he uses and how sort of film grainy it is. I love the textures of his movies, and this is a really, really, really good looking and well shot film, and it's so well put together, whether it's the action of the film or even the humor and choosing when to cut and how to frame people makes the jokes so funny. Now, as funny and as gorgeous as this film is, it's quite brutal, and there are some very, very difficult scenes that take a very serious turn and can get a little bit disturbing. It was dark at moments, and my theater, like I said, had a huge gasp at one scene, but there were multiple moments where people were sort of turning away, myself included. I was bracing myself for something gross that might happen, and Yorgos is obviously not afraid to play with gross themes or gross behaviors and actions, but this film, in a torture sense, because it is an abduction movie, it's very brutal, and he's not shying away from that fact that they're not going to treat Michelle like a princess. They're treating her like a potential alien who is a CEO, and even if she's not an alien, they think she's an evil person for being a CEO. So the torture elements are very jarring, and specifically Teddy's treatment of her is very awful and hard to watch at times. times. But okay, maybe a few things I want to talk about as well. It's not a perfect movie for me because I do think going towards the third act, what is one of the best third acts of the year, easily one of the best handled third acts that constantly has you saying what the fuck is going on. But going into the ending, a few big things happen and it feels a little bit rushed. I think this movie's only 2 hours. You could have had another 5 minutes where you give us a couple scenes that are processing what just happened, because the way this film is broken down, there's 4 days of the lunar cycle or whatever, and they are suspicious she's an alien and the mothership is coming to Earth on the lunar cycle. So that's sort of the delivery method of the film and how it's broken down over those 4 days. And the final day is really brushed through. Like there's the 1 day left and some big things happen on the one of the days, and it really rushes through that part of the story, and I just felt like we're already going on to the next thing when something big just happened, and I didn't have time to process that or really sit with it, especially with how truly traumatic it was and my theater's reaction to it and how it's a big story point. It felt like we just moved on very quickly. So the jump to the third act was a little bit quick, but it's maybe one of the best third acts of the year. And now let's talk about some Oscar potentials for this film, because I do think adapted screenplay, it possibly has a shot despite a couple of the writing issues I had. From an acting standpoint, I think this film will definitely be in the conversation for all 3 main performers. Let's do 2 stars and a wish, and then we'll read some funny Letterboxd reviews. Star number 1, a truly bleak outlook on humanity that I think is needed right now. These kind of films need to happen. Star number 2, extremely committed performances. The performances are not only good, but what they are doing on an extreme level is extremely committed and needs to be celebrated. My wish, again, just letting us sit in those darker moments and the bigger emotional moments would have had a real bigger impact on me for the film and my final rating. But I want to read you 3 funny Letterboxd reviews because we haven't read any Letterboxd reviews in a little while. So first one comes from Jack Salvadori, who gave Bugonia 4 stars. Lanthimos is not an alien, he's just Greek. Next up, Connor Eats Pants gave Bugonia 3.5 stars. Girls go to Jupiter to get more stupider. It's just science, folks, not trying to be political. Very good. Final one, Yashley gave Bugonia 4 stars. When life gives you plemons, you make plemonade. Very good, very good, very good. Okay, but overall, Bugonia, this was a blast. I would watch it again in a heartbeat. Yorgos is such a fascinating storyteller, and I've loved his last 3 films. I want to go back and watch The Lobster, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, as well as Dogtooth, but Bugonia was better than Kinds of Kindness, not as good as Poor Things, but still super solid. I think it's very much speaking to the time that we're living in right now. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, a very good A mark or whatever you want to call it. It's a good movie. Go check it out. Let's get into spoilers. All right, spoilers for Bugonia. You've been warned. I'm about to spoil the film, but I want to start with every time that the movie is showing how many days till the lunar cycle or whatever, the Earth gets a little bit more flat and starts to look like the flat conspiracy theorist thing, because we are slowly proving Teddy more and more right. Because Emma Stone's character, she is an alien. That's the whole point of the film, is that Teddy, in fact, like what if a conspiracy theorist was right? What if the Earth was flat? But at the same time, he's proven right, and he's lost everything in his life. He's killed his own mother, which we will get to. His cousin is dead. It's just a really fucked up total metaphor that, yes, his experiment or his, social outlook and his social research about this alien was correct, but he has literally lost everything in the process and ruined his own life in many ways. But I loved that little slow development of the story that Yorgos is doing with every, 1 day until lunar cycle, 2 days, blah, 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 how the Earth is getting more and more flat with the dome over it. But I want to talk about Teddy's relationship with his mother, Michelle's role as a CEO in that. So this film, I mentioned addiction within the themes because Teddy's mom was addicted to opioids, and they supposedly at Michelle's company came up with this experiment or this solution that would help people wean off of, or wean sounds wrong. Wean off of opioids, or they could slowly pull back their addiction so they could become less and less dependent. A bunch of people in that experiment actually went into comas because the new methods or the new science experiment or whatever made them sick. And that is how we get that flashback and the connection between Teddy, that Teddy is not only working at her company, but is, sort of living his life to get revenge on her, the CEO, as she is an alien and he's figured it out. But at the same time, he also just hates her in general. So it's a little bit of a 2-part weird connection there, but it is interesting how this film is sort of touching on corporate responsibility within medicine, and how Michelle is talking about, oh, well, we'll give you lots of money, you'll be well taken care of, I'm so sorry this happened, and all of that stuff. And like, corporate responsibility is a very new thing. 60 years ago, corporate responsibility was not a thing. It was like, dump your waste in local land and local water or whatever. That is only a very new idea, when in fact these corporations are still able to do whatever they want. So I found Teddy's mother's relationship being sort of the linking between Michelle and Teddy as really interesting. And I loved visual style of those chapters, how this film is kind of playing with your mind a little bit, and Teddy is holding his mother above him like a balloon. These weird gray and black and white flashbacks that we see where Teddy is meeting them and Michelle does not recognize him, or she acts like she doesn't recognize him. And I just love how Yorgos uses the score in that scene is brilliant as well. This movie has a really good score. I didn't even mention that in non-spoilers, but oh my god, the music is phenomenal. It uses Green Day, it uses Chapel Roan, but the actual orchestrated or the composed music is out of this world. One of my favorites of the year probably. But the visual imagery of Teddy holding on to his mother above him like a balloon and floating above him literally, when he's actually just grieving that process and holding on to her as she's in a coma, was very fascinating. And there was that whole bathtub scene where Teddy has all those needles in her and it's supposed to work and whatever that meant. But I love how Yorgos is sort of playing with the real life sensibilities in some way. But okay, moving on a little bit to Donnie and Teddy. Was Donnie pressured into doing this? Because like I mentioned, he's a little bit of the Of Mice and Men Lenny character, where George is maybe taking advantage of him because he can't recognize some social cues, he can't recognize some choices that he could be making for himself, and you're sort of preying on someone neurodivergent and can't make some decisions for themselves and needs help, when in fact Teddy is sort of preying on that a little bit. But he says, oh, I love you so much, cousin, like, you're so smart, you're so brave, all of this stuff. Like, he gets himself to chemically castrate himself at the start of the film so he can become asexual like Teddy, and he doesn't give in to his indulgences because, you know, Michelle's a very attractive woman. I think Donnie is never truly on the same level as Teddy, and he's not as committed to this entire endeavor because he knows it's wrong. And that culminates in the biggest shock of the film, where everyone in my theater, there was a gasp and a very strong silence after it happens, when Donnie has a gun pulled on Michelle because he's watching her, and she sort of uses these mind tricks in some ways because she is an alien, and Teddy is right. You can see these waves and these little flickers happening like on the screen that almost looks like she's using mind control in some ways. That was fascinating, but Donnie turns the shotgun around and shoots himself in the head. So is Michelle responsible for his death, or what is the reading of that scene? I feel like he was moving towards a sad end, and Michelle maybe pushed him towards that in a very dark way to say that, because you have those visual cues that Yorgos is giving us. Honestly, the more I think about this movie, just the more I like it. I haven't stopped thinking about it since I saw it on Thursday night. It is so damn good. A rewatch might bump up my 4 to a 4.5, but I don't know, because I really do think after Donnie's death, we rush into the final day really quickly. Like, it's after that moment when Teddy kills Officer Casey when they're standing outside, Donnie kills himself, Teddy runs inside, and then they sort of have the revelation that, oh, she found his experiments and she admits that she's an alien. And then from there, Teddy is just like, oh, I'm so sorry, your worship, or whatever it is. And we sort of forget about the whole Donnie situation and, oh, it was sad. But I don't know, it was just a weird moment where it didn't feel like we truly sat with Donnie in that moment of being like, wow, we just lost your closest loved one other than your mother who's in a coma. And it was just, it was a weird sort of brush past, but my theater gasped at the Donnie moment, as well as my theater was very confused with Officer Casey, who is played by Stavros, the podcast guy. He is Teddy's former babysitter, and he is investigating the missing persons case of Michelle, and he sees Teddy going to work that one day, and he sort of talks to him, and they clearly have not talked in a while, and he feels weird being in that house or talking to him in general, because it's eventually hinted at that he did something to Teddy. And as a babysitter, I don't know, people are sort of putting their own meanings on what he did, but it is most likely molestation. He probably sexually assaulted him as a child or a teenager. Very weird scene, and you can see how Teddy maybe has some trauma that, again, the conspiracy theories and the political aspects of this film are trying to help him heal, but it's not really, and he's not actually processing the stuff that has happened to him, whether it is being molested as a child, whether it is is losing his father because his father is not in the picture in this film, and then eventually his mother going into a coma after everything's happened with Michelle, the CEO, and her company. Yeah, a very fascinating storyline there that I thought was a really good addition into explaining the life of Teddy a little bit more, that he's clearly had things done to him as a child that fucked him up in the rest of his life, and he has some trauma, and he himself talks about how he's gone hard left, hard right, he's tried to go down the center, he's done conspiracy theories, and conspiracy is the only one that makes sense to him now of these alien theories, and that's how he is the man he is today. And again, Yorgos is not making fun of him at any point in this film. It's very much like he's taking him seriously, and this is how people think. This is a real situation. Well, this movie is saying, what if this conspiracy theorist was right? But the last 30 minutes of this movie, as much as it is a little bit rushed to those 30 minutes before, the chain of events, which I'll go through just quickly, because when you say it out loud, it sort of shakes your mind, that there is Donnie's death to Michelle's broken knee from Teddy hitting her and then chasing after his mother in the hospital, killing his own mom with antifreeze, smuggling Michelle into her own office because she apparently is going to be picked up by the aliens there, finding the torture chamber, the suicide vest, the big alien reveal, killing humanity. It was honestly crazy how quickly this movie is throwing all of these big twists. Like some other movies would have, one big twist. This movie probably has 15, and it's really non-stop for the last 30 minutes. My audience, as soon as the film ended, someone probably 3 rows behind me said, "What the actual fuck just happened?" And it was very funny. A lot of people laughed as soon as the credits rolled because it was just one of those movies you cannot believe, and it's a real thrill. And I think the alien reveal works really well with Emma Stone, that her species, the Andromedans or whatever they're called, from the Andromeda galaxy, came to Earth and accidentally wiped out the dinosaurs in a science experiment. So they created humans, or they created another life form or whatever that eventually evolved into humans, but humans have been their experiment or whatever, and the Earth is flat and there's this bubble over it, or the dome or whatever you want to call it. And it's really fun to see kind of all these conspiracies come true, and that humanity is a experiment, and we have sort of an answer to how humans got here in the first place. But as soon as Emma Stone was in that ambulance as Michelle, obviously when she's under that air mask and she takes it off and booked it, I was like, okay, this is going to be the alien reveal. I was so dead set the entire film that she's an alien. It's great. I think it really works. I loved the reveal. I loved it for her character, and the ending of this movie made me really sad when she pops the bubble on humanity and ends the experiment, and we see sort of a frozen picture of, highways where people are crashed. We see clothing workshops that you could call sweatshops pretty much. We see factories. We see whatever it might be, nightclubs. We see humanity dead in place. It's sort of an analogy that we are kind of dead in place, and we're going through the motions by leading ourselves down this path in a lot of ways. And it was just really frightening and really dark, but I think this movie is just so brilliantly put together, and it has so much to say about how we interact with people of different maybe political alignments, and how we can use their thoughts against them, or how we play into some people's naivete or naiveties, whatever you want to say. I really liked Bugonia. Honestly, the more I'm talking it through, the more I liked it, as much as it did feel a little bit rushed, and I think there were a few missing pieces. But Bugonia, 4 stars out of 5. Let's move into what else I watched. Alrighty, what else I watched for this week? I have 5 movies and 4 TV shows to talk about. Actually, no comic books, because I was so far ahead reading for the comic collection read-through series after the Batman Part 2 video. Let's go to TV shows, though. I started a new season of Survivor this week. Survivor Guatemala, which is season 11. I know Danny wins. I watched this season when I was younger. I watched 12 episodes. I was in deep, like every single night. I was like, I want to watch Survivor, and it's a good season. I like the cast, not, as people or personalities or whatever, and I think Stephanie LaGrossa is just an incredibly overrated player, but the cast dynamics are very good. Like, I think everyone is very cutthroat. There's that whole Jamie and Bobby John dynamic that works. So I have 3 episodes left, and I'm very excited to finish and see how Danny sort of pulls it back to get all the votes for her to win. But Survivor Guatemala, very good season. I can't remember what the next season is. is. But as for current Survivor 49, episode 6, I think it was a fantastic episode. I loved the new tribe swap. I get that a lot of people didn't like it, but it gave us the perfect dynamics for Sage and Shannon to have a showdown. But Sage had been waiting for this moment for many, many days, and her having to play, hey sister, what's up sister? And then the not hugging her after she voted her out was maybe one of my favorite moments of the new era. Just telling her, I can't give you a genuine hug right now because I've been talking shit about you for however long it's been, like 14 days or 12 days or whatever. I thought was such a mature move from Sage. Like that was just such an adult thing to be like, I'm not giving you a hug right now, and being like, oh, bye bestie. And it was so funny that as soon as that second vote was read with Shannon on it, her face went from all hippie Christian spirituality face to like, oh shit, it's me. I love moments like that where you can tell someone is probably seething inside, but they have to fake it on the outside. But after that, we had the Chair Company episode 3 titled At Brown Derby Historic Vids, Little Bit of Hollywood. Okay. This show is so strange, and Tim Robinson is just like one of the kookiest guys in the world. Like it's actually hard to recommend his stuff to people because they're going to think you are strange, but the mystery of the show is really fun, and how that Italian dude, and there was like the shorter Italian dude was in his garage just kicking stuff. It's hilarious. Go and watch the Chair Company, please. But this week we got the season finale for Only Murders in the Building, season 5. I'm actually shocked it was the finale. I thought there would be like one more episode, but I guess they lost the building, and they've already confirmed that season 6 is going to London. As Larry David said, as soon as a show travels, you know it's in trouble. So I don't know. The fact that they're leaving the Arconia is sure, but I think the show maybe does need to end. It is getting a little bit old for me. It's kind of getting the same thing over and over every season where, oh, Steve Martin's character is in love with someone, and oh, Martin Short's character is narcissistic, but he's actually a nice guy, and Selena Gomez's character has a love interest that is boring, and it's some good-looking guy. So the whole reveal that, oh, Lester, he actually killed the other dude so that he could save the Arconia. I guess it's fine. I like the inverted sort of expectations of it all, but it was a bit of a weaker season for me, or at least I was casually less interested in the show, but it's still a very fun show. I just wish Martin Short would stop doing that stupid gagging, choking sound that he does every single episode, every single scene. It's too much for a quirk. But let's get into movies. I have decided to continue my Variety 100 Greatest Movies of All Time. So I watched 2 from the list this week. I had already seen Bridesmaids like last year, so I was like, okay, I'm not going to rewatch it because I've seen it super recently, so I added it to my list again, but kept my rating from last year because I still think it's brilliant. But I watched A Hard Day's Night from 1964, which is a Beatles film. It's a musical comedy, and it's sort of a tie-in to their album A Hard Day's Night, I guess. And they have another one that someone commented on my social media video about it. I think it's for Help, but I think I will watch that eventually because I'm not a huge like Beatles expert, and I know roughly about the band because there's just so much public information about them out there, and you know, they're talked about in every piece of media, and everyone knows about the Beatles in general. I was curious after watching the film, what were the peak years for the Beatles? Like, what did everyone view as their biggest years? And 1964, when the movie's taking place, fans of the band from r/Beatles say that the real meteoric rise, or the years that they truly got big, were 1963, 1964. So it's really fun watching that movie when all of them are around my age. Like the oldest is 25, the youngest is 21, and yet they're just like these normal, funny dudes that are just in a rock band, but happen to have half of the women of the world going crazy over them. And it's just a really, really interesting sight into their lives of fame and what rock band or pop band or whatever you want to say, fandom and stardom looked like at that time, and what I would say is still post-war Britain. And seeing how the Beatles play into that was really interesting. It was a very funny movie, so I gave A Hard Day's Night 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then the next movie on the list that I did watch was Toy Story from 1995, a movie I'm very familiar with. I used to watch Toy Story 1 and 2 so much as a kid, like all of the time. My brother and I had a Buzz Lightyear and a Woody toy. I had the Woody one and my brother had Buzz Lightyear, and we were obsessed with those toys as kids. We love Toy Story in our household, and it holds up. The animation is a little bit jarring now in 2025. I mean, that's holy shit, that's 30 years later. It still really works story-wise. It is all about sort of finding yourself and realizing when you're in your prime, or finding new purpose, or coming to realization of who you are. You know, Buzz Lightyear going on this journey as what he is in life, and it's about self-acceptance and finding friendship and community and not pitting ourselves against against each other and how comparison is the thief of joy, as they say. It's just also really funny. Like, it's a very funny movie. It's still super family friendly. Like, I think this is a movie that kids should be watching now. It's so much fun. So I gave Toy Story 4.5 stars. The next movie I watched was a new release, A House of Dynamite, the new Catherine Bigelow Netflix film with a bunch. It's a huge cast. Like, every time someone showed up, I was like, what the hell? Greta Lee's in this? And it was not great. To be honest, it is kind of teasing you the entire time, but let me read the cast out for you. Idris Elba, Rebecca Ferguson, Gabrielle Basso, Jared Harris, Tracy Letts, Anthony Ramos, Moses Ingram, Jonah Howard King, Greta Lee, Jason Clarke, Malachi Beasley, Brian T, Brittany O'Grady, Gabenga Akinagabe, Willa Fitzgerald, Renee Elise Goldsberry, Kyle Allen, Caitlin Dever, Neil Bledsoe. It's a freaking crazy cast. Having said that, the script is awful. It is basically about the American response to what if there were a nuclear weapon launched in America, and what does that response plan look like? It's not actually about the aftermath, and that's the most frustrating part. It's about how poorly prepared and how little response they actually have for this type of situation. So I don't know. And it's doing like 3 separate stories or 3 separate perspectives, but every time the film starts to get more interesting, it cuts away instead of giving you an answer. I found the start of the film with Rebecca Ferguson's character, as bad as her American accent is, that situation room drama was the most interesting part for me. And then we just get pulled away from that, and I didn't really care about the other 2 stories. It's one of those movies that is diminishing returns, that the further into it you get, the less interesting it is. I was ready to go through that avenue with Rebecca Ferguson's character and find out how this all plays out. But then once you realize what this movie's doing of, oh no, it's just showing you the systems that are in place right now, I was a little bit disappointed. And I don't know, the final chapter where it really surrounds the president in Idris Elba, I was like, I get it. But one thing I said in my Letterboxd review is it feels like this movie is really stuck in 2014, where there is a likable public persona president. And there's also, no mention of Reddit or Twitter or social media reaction to any of this stuff. So if that happened today, it would have been a very different response. And it was just hilarious to watch in the big 2025. So I gave it 2.5 stars. But the final 2 films I watched on Halloween night, the first one, A Nightmare on Elm Street, what many will consider to be one of the greatest horror films of all time, from Wes Craven, who of course did Scream and lots of other big projects that have gone on to part of the sort of Mount Rushmore of horror films. Well, I watched A Nightmare on Elm Street for the very first time. This has been on my bucket list of scary movies for a while, and I really liked it. I like the whole trapping someone in a dream or horror in a dream, and how does that look in real life versus, mass hysteria. I like when teenagers are sort of labeled as crazy by adults in stories, and how stupid parents can be is really funny in horror movies, when in real life, obviously parents would care way more. But it was a fun, inventive film that there's one scene where blood is pouring from a bed onto the ceiling, and it's clear how it's done. Like, that they're filming upside down, but having the parents walk in was really cool. I gave it 4 stars. Like, it didn't blow my mind, but it was just a really fun, solid, old school horror movie. And then I finished the night by watching Scooby-Doo from 2002, the live action version. This was a movie that I watched a lot as a child. I probably have not seen it in 17 or 18 years, but I gotta say, it's really stupid and I love it dearly. I know there is, a lot of fart jokes and haha, woman naked, haha, man like woman, and jokes like that. It's really dumb, but there's so many hilarious moments, and one of them is a fart joke. When Shaggy farts in a knight's armor, it made me burst out laughing, and I genuinely had a good time rewatching it after 17 or 18 years. As much it is weird seeing like a mature Scooby-Doo version, and it's a James Gunn script, which is hilarious to me that he was the guy to bring Scooby-Doo to live action. So I'm gonna watch Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed eventually, but the first one I gave 3.5 stars. It was a lot of fun, but as for this week, that has been what else I watched. And in fact, I think that's going to do it for episode 92, Bugonia, a very fun, very mind-blowing, twisty-turny film that I thought was super solid. Yorgos does it again. But as always, please rate and review the show 5 stars wherever you get your great podcasts, like Watcher of All Things, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Acast. We are, of course, an Acast-produced show. You can leave a comment right underneath on Spotify. Drop us a 5-star rating. Let me know what you thought of Bugonia. Where does it sit on your ranking of Yorgos Lanthimos films. For the 3 that I've seen, this is probably my second favorite, but if you're on the YouTube channel where we passed 600 subscribers a few weeks ago, that was really fun. There is a new video there all about the Batman Part 2. Check that out. On this episode, drop a comment. Again, what are you watching right now? Where do you think this movie will land come Oscar time? Hit like, subscribe, the notification bell so you know when new podcast episodes or videos drop. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can email us, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, and find me on social media. Instagram and Threads are just at watcherofallthings. TikTok is at watcher.of.all.things. And my personal Letterboxd account, which is KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Drop a comment under one of my reviews that you found me through the show. I'll follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week for episode 93, I really wanted to do Die My Love, but I'm actually seeing Predator Badlands early, and I will get an episode out all about Predator Badlands, which I am so excited for. It looks badass. It looks really fun. I'm seeing it in IMAX. It's going to be a freaking blast. But for now, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for the love and the kind messages I get every single week. Happy post-Halloween, I guess. It's now the fall season moving into the holidays. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.